Welcome back to Color Vistas. If you've ever made a mistake or simply want to refresh a design on a sublimated tumbler, you might be wondering if it's possible to remove sublimation ink. Today, I'll guide you through a few techniques for removing sublimation ink from a tumbler. We'll talk about when it's possible, how each method works, and what to keep in mind along the way. By the end, you'll have a few reliable ways to handle unwanted designs and give your tumbler a fresh start. Let's get into it. Let's start with a bit of background. Sublimation ink is known for its durability because it bonds with polyester or polymer-coated surfaces at a molecular level. This strong bond is what makes sublimation prints so long-lasting, vibrant, and resistant to fading. However, this also makes removing sublimation ink more challenging compared to other types of ink. Once sublimation ink is transferred onto a tumbler, it's embedded into the polymer coating, so removal requires specific methods to loosen or mask the ink. The first approach to removing sublimation ink from a tumbler is using heat. Since sublimation ink is heat-activated, exposing it to high temperatures can sometimes help to loosen the bond between the ink and the tumbler. One way to do this is by placing the tumbler in a convection oven at a high temperature, typically around 400 degrees, for about 10-15 minutes. Be cautious with this method, as too much heat can damage the tumbler or cause discoloration, so keep a close eye on it during the process. After heating, use a cloth to wipe the surface gently and see if the ink has lightened. While this technique may not remove all of the ink completely, it can help fade the design enough to make it less noticeable. If you're looking for a stronger method, abrasive scrubbing is another approach. This method involves using an abrasive material like sandpaper or an abrasive pad to physically scrub the ink off the surface of the tumbler. It's best to start with fine grit sandpaper or a gentle abrasive pad to avoid scratching the tumbler too deeply. Gently rub the surface where the sublimation ink is, focusing on areas with heavy ink. Be careful with this method, as excessive scrubbing can damage the tumbler's coating, leaving it with a rough texture. Abrasive scrubbing is usually effective at lightening the design but may not fully remove it, especially for darker colors. Another effective way to remove sublimation ink is by using chemical solvents. Certain chemicals like acetone or rubbing alcohol can help break down the sublimation ink and make it easier to remove. To try this method, dampen a cloth or cotton ball with a small amount of acetone or alcohol and rub it gently over the design. Work in small sections, applying light pressure to avoid damaging the tumbler's coating. Be aware that this method may cause some discoloration or cloudiness, so it's a good idea to test it on a small area first. After using the solvent, rinse the tumbler with water and let it dry completely. If you're dealing with a persistent design that won't come off easily, consider sanding and recoating the tumbler. This approach is more intensive, but can be effective if you're determined to remove a sublimation design and start over. Start by sanding the tumbler's surface thoroughly with fine grit sandpaper until the ink has faded. After sanding, clean the tumbler with rubbing alcohol to remove any dust or residue. Once the tumbler is clean and dry, apply a clear polymer coating or spray specifically designed for sublimation. This recoating process restores the tumbler's surface, making it ready for a new design. This method works best if you're comfortable with DIY projects and don't mind putting in a bit of extra effort to salvage the tumbler. Another option for covering up a sublimation design is using a new sublimation print to mask the original design. While this won't technically remove the ink, it's a quick and easy way to cover up an old design with a fresh one. Start by printing a new design that's larger or darker than the original. Place the new design over the old one, and apply heat and pressure as you would normally for sublimation. The new ink will likely cover the previous design, especially if it's a darker or bolder color. This method is great for quick fixes, but keep in mind that it works best if the new design aligns well with the old one. Bleaching is another method that can help lighten sublimation ink on a tumbler, although it requires some caution. This method involves applying a small amount of bleach to a cloth and gently rubbing it over the design. Bleach can weaken the ink's bond with the tumbler, but it can also damage the tumbler's coating, so use this method sparingly. After applying the bleach, rinse the tumbler thoroughly with water to remove any residue and avoid leaving bleach on the surface for too long. Always test on a small area first to avoid accidental damage. When considering these methods, it's important to weigh the potential risks and benefits. Since sublimation ink is designed to be permanent, these methods may not completely remove the ink, but can help fade or mask it. Each approach has its pros and cons, so choose the one that best fits your needs and the specific tumbler you're working with. If your goal is to salvage a tumbler for personal use, one of these techniques might work well. However, if you need a flawless finish for selling or gifting, you might consider replacing the tumbler instead. A few safety tips before trying any of these methods. Always wear gloves and work in a well-ventilated area, especially when using chemicals like acetone or bleach. It's also a good idea to have a clean, soft cloth or sponge on hand for wiping the surface, as using rough materials can scratch or damage the tumbler. In addition to these methods, always check the care instructions for your specific tumbler brand. Some tumblers are more resistant to heat or chemicals, while others may have a coating that's more sensitive to these treatments. Following proper care instructions helps maintain the quality of your tumblers and avoid accidental damage. Ultimately, removing sublimation ink from a tumbler can be a bit of a challenge, but with the right approach, you can often lighten or cover up unwanted designs. If you're looking to refresh your design or start over, these methods give you a range of options, whether you prefer using heat, abrasive techniques, or chemical solvents. So, those are a few ways you can try to remove or fade sublimation ink from a tumbler. Each method has its own advantages, so choose the one that best suits your needs. Remember, sublimation is designed to be permanent, so removing it completely can be tough, but these techniques can help you get as close as possible. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to check the description for recommended sublimation products and more helpful tips where applicable. And be sure to visit my website for more guides on sublimation. Link is in the description below. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you've tried any of these methods. See you in the next video.